Hi, I'm Danielle, and welcome back to my channel where I talk about whatever it is I feel like. And today is another episode of We Have Makeup at Home, an extra special episode of We Have Makeup at Home because it's a viewer suggestion. I have viewers. But yes, this is suggested by Ola3331, and they suggested that I do the Magnetic Mineralia palette from Dieverune Cosmetics. So this palette is a collaboration with the creator s.andromedae. I hope that's how they pronounce their name. I can't say that I'm familiar with the creator, but I am familiar with Dieverune Cosmetics, and I have looked at this palette before. So we're going to talk about this palette a little bit. It contains 9 mattes, 4 shifty chromes, and 2 metallics. Andromeda says this palette was inspired by a wide variety of minerals, both rough rocks and refined gemstones. It's my personal perfect assortment of neutrals. The art was done by my longtime friend and tattoo artist, Zane Decker Tattoos. The amethyst on the cover represents her spouse's birthstone. Or the amethyst on the cover represents their spouse's birthstone. The snake represents serpentine, a stone they've been obsessed with for a long time. Originally, the shades were all named for various minerals, but it felt most right to leave them without names. And it has magnetic packaging. What else? So there's smoky purples, olive beiges, deep grays, acid greens. This is sure to be what you reach for when looking for a grungy look. There are multiple formulas of shimmers. Some are smooth and finely milled, others more opaque and impactful, and even one of their best-selling Phantom Shifter shades. So, quite a palette. So before I get into the palette vibes I have, we're going to talk about the skill that I'm working on. And it's basically yes, an enthusiastic yes, where this is already in my cart. My credit card information is inserted. I'm going to get this with a swiftness. Next section is like yes, but kind of like a soft yes, where maybe I'll wait for a sale. I don't need it that pressingly. Or maybe I just kind of want to ruminate on it a little bit. See if this is still catching my eye after a couple weeks, or did I just completely forget about it in the rush to buy more makeup? And then, of course, there's no, where, yeah, I have makeup at home. I don't need this, or this palette didn't capture my attention enough for me, but that's the scale that we're working on. At some point, I will have graphics for this scale, but we're just doing this so far. Okay, so let's go over the palettes that I used to create this look and the palettes that I immediately thought of when it came to this Magnetic Mineralia color story. I have 3 palettes here. The first one is basically a makeup relic. This is so old. This is from Unearthly Cosmetics, but wait, there's more. This is from them when they were called Alien Cosmetics. They have since reformulated their entire brand in general. They have since repackaged this palette. They've since expanded this palette, but not normal. When I saw Magnetic Mineralia, I think this is one of the first palettes that I picked up. I was like, yeah, this is this palette, no? And you can see a lot of similarities. I think outside of this forest green, the rest of the palette very much captures the vibes of Magnetic Mineralia. I think the only other difference besides the like really forest green or like Kelly green almost. The other difference is the shimmers are not as special. These aren't like multi-chrome or shifty. They're just some pretty standard shimmers that still look gorgeous, but they don't really capture Dieverune shimmers. As you can see, it has the nice purple. It has the kind of like olivey green, a more minty green. These kind of cool tone grays, I think, work really well. And the shimmers, the base color of the shimmer, I think, works well, but it doesn't shift into something different, as I said. So this was, again, one of the first palettes that I thought of when I saw the Magnetic Mineralia. A fossil of a palette. This is a fossil. This is, you could put this in a museum. This next palette is Dead Roses 2 by Bella Beauté Bar. And when I first looked at it, I was kind of like, because basically when I do this, I go through my palettes and I open almost every single one that I think is going to match the criteria that I'm looking for. And I opened this one and at first I was like, no, not really. But then I opened it again and I was like, we're doing a little something here. So the main reason I wanted this one was for this top 12. This bottom row is not as much of the vibe as the Magnetic Mineralia, but these top 12, I think they really work. They have this, again, really bright, almost neon-y green, the kind of olivey tone green, with those two that are a bit more murky. We have definitely some more of the deeper, grungier kind of purples. The only difference is that these purples are a little bit warmer than I think the Magnetic Mineralia is, but still, I think this is a pretty good capture of the color story. Again, once you remove this like reddish row. And also this has some really special shimmers. So I used this one today for this look. But yeah, the shimmers are nice and appropriately sparkly and special. But I think this really kind of captures the essence, especially top 12. So this one has the most shades, and you guys know that I like to, when I do these videos, I like to make sure it's a more curated color story, and that I keep it as closely aligned to how many shades are in the palette as I possibly can, just because I feel as though it's a cop-out to be like, yeah, of course I could dupe the vibes, and I just pull out my Ellis Brooklyn Blend Bunny palette. Like, yeah, of course I can find shades in that massive, like 50 shadow palette. Of course I can find dupes, but it's a little harder if the palette's smaller. So this one has the most shades, and this is the Huldra by Singe Beauty. The main difference with this color story is that I think this runs a lot warmer than the Magnetic Mineralia does. Also, it has some superfluous shades. I can't quite pinpoint which ones they are right now, like probably this green and that kind of thing, but it does have a couple of those like darker, grungier tones. So I think mostly for the greens and some of the neutrals, but the purples run a little too warm, obviously. But the rest of it, I think, works really well. And this does, even though not all of the shades are special duochrome, super sparkly, it does have some really nice metallics, and I believe this shade right here, this shade does have a nice little green kind of shift to it that I think would work really pretty and kind of matches the vibe of the Magnetic Mineralia palette. Overall, I think this is a really good kind of vibes match, especially with how overtly purple and green it is. Really nice. I really like this palette too. So yeah, those are the palettes that we're working with. And without further ado, let's get into my recreation of the vibes of Magnetic Mineralia. Look at my Twilight pajamas. They're so cute. I'm wearing these still because this is me basically just getting ready for the day. So for this look, I thought about it, and I think what I want to do is kind of a gray halo eye. So I'm going to use grays. I think I want the center of the lid to be kind of that bright green. And then I think the lower lash line is going to be dark purple. Or like just purple in general. I think that's the look I have in mind for today. I am going to start off with the Singe Beauty Huldra palette. And I'm going to use this Soul Snatcher shade just to kind of start with something. Like that. I just want to start with something. Because I don't want this to be as winged out, I'm going to start with the darkest shade. I'm going to use the Not Normal palette from Alien Cosmetics, or Unearthly Cosmetics. You can tell this is old. This is the old packaging back when it was still called Alien. It's not the extended shade range. I'm just going to use this shade on the outer and inner corner. The shade called Smoke, the dark gray. This looks appropriately dramatic. So I'm going to go into Dead Roses 2. This is Dead Roses 2 from Bella Beauté Bar. And I want to use this Heartbreak shade right here to kind of blend out the black. The Magnetic Mineralia palette is it's rather cool toned and dark and smoky. At least those are the vibes I'm getting. But I did like that pop of green. So that's why that's going in the center. And I think the reason I didn't do just like a green and purple look, which was my initial thought, is because I feel like I do that a lot in my everyday life. And I wanted to play with some of like the smokier, darker colors that I wouldn't typically go towards. Ooh, it's a nice little smoky moment. Okay. Speaking of getting out of my comfort zone, I'm going to do something I genuinely never do, which is add some color to the brow bone. I was looking at this pale gray shade called Morning, and I'm going to put that on my brow bone. I normally never do this. I dislike how I look with a color on my brow bone. But I don't know, I kind of want to try it today. I normally hate it. I don't know. Yeah, I think this is what I wanted to do. Now we're going to make sure it's blended. Okay. We're going to hold our thoughts until we finish this. I want a green in the center, so we're going to go into this really bright green right here. Wilt. This is Wilt. That's pretty cool. Okay, okay. Look at that. It's really cool. Honestly, I'm dipping into this palette way more than I thought I would. Dead Roses 2. I'm going to go into this transition shade. I think it matches the shimmer really well. Maybe one day I'll do an all matte look, but that's not today. I love a shimmer. Oh, that's stunning. Okay. Oh, yes. I absolutely love coming back to a forehead that is no longer shiny. Look at that. I'm just taking some of my colorful shadow stick in the shade Periwinkle Matte to the waterline. I feel as though I enjoy using shadow sticks and things like that for my waterline rather than actual like eyeliner pencils. I don't know why, but shadow sticks and paints, I tend to use those for my waterline a lot. I think it has to do with the colors that I like to use. We're going into the Huldra palette. Yep, we're going into the Huldra palette, and we're going to use the shade Shapeshifter on the lower lash line to really bring us some purple. I was looking at the palette again whilst I was doing my foundation, and that purple is like really, really dark. So I'm hoping this gives me the effect that I want. We shall see, though. Oh, yeah. I think it already is. I think it already is. Ooh! Not that I'm surprised this look is beautiful, but I just finally got the effect of it with the purple, and yeah, I'm loving it. Oh, that's gorgeous. Okay. I think for the inner corner, I'm going to use the bright green, this Wilt shade. It's very obvious, but I feel as though it's going to look gorgeous. Perfect. Yee! I love how this looks. So let me do my final touches, put on a lip, get dressed, and then we'll talk about my final thoughts. Alrighty, this is the final look. Thank you once again to Ola3331 for the suggestion. I had a lot of fun making a look on this palette. I love the green. I love the purple. I love how like dark and grungy it is. I even like the white on the brow bone. Will I do that part again? Probably not. Maybe not, but I do feel that it works really well with this palette, and I really like how it is. So thank you. My final verdict on this palette was no, I don't have a need to get it. I have makeup at home. I have makeup I really like. I do have quite a few kind of grungy palettes that have these deep, dark, cool tones and murky tones coupled with a couple of bright colors. So I feel as though I have that in spades, and I have no real need for this palette, but it still is quite gorgeous. And the look I made inspired by it is quite gorgeous. So that's pretty much it. If you have any other suggestions for me, please leave them in the comments. I do love making these videos. I do love reading the comments and kind of talking about makeup. That's generally one of my most favorite things in the world. And I will see you next time. I have something else to talk about. Bye.